Sure shot, baby!
So, good day, everyone. We're here for another episode of the DVD show. So, for today, we have one of the best coaches here in the Philippines, and he recently coached Gilas to certain wins here in the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers, and he also coached them in the FIBA Olympic qualifying tournament. And they also had a tournament recently in Jordan, and but they were supposed to prepare for the FIBA Asia Cup, but unfortunately, it got postponed and he's still going to be the program director for Gilas over the next few years. And I'll now welcome here to the DVD show, Coach Tab Baldwin. Thank you for joining me here on my podcast.
G'day, Diego. Great to be here with you, mate. And appreciate the opportunity to talk basketball, talk life, and let's have some fun.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, yeah, thank you for joining me here again. But first, I wanted to ask, how have you been doing? And there's no Gilas games now. There's no PBA games to tune into. So yeah, what have you been doing to spend time now, maybe to relax first a bit since you guys have been playing a ton of games and practices over the last few months?
Well, first of all, I had to serve my 10-day prison sentence in quarantine when I came back from Jordan. And that's tough. I stayed an extra 4 or 5 days in Jordan after the team came back because I have a lot of old friends there.
Oh, okay.
So I came back and served my quarantine, and since then I've only been out less than a week. Just been away from the house, I guess more than a month. So cleaning and taking care of my dogs, reacquainting myself with them, and yeah, just generally, fixing up the property and relaxing, like you said, getting away from it, but also talking to the bosses and putting ideas in place and starting to plan for obviously the November window, FIBA window, and then beyond that, 2022 is going to be a very busy year. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Well, how about with the Gilas? And you said you guys are still resting now for the meantime as of this recording. But when do you get? What are your short-term plans, and when do you plan to resume practices or training? Since it's November is kind of close already, and I think 2022 there's Asian Games, Sea Games, and all the other windows that you mentioned that's gonna continue till for the 2023 World Cup. So how is the team gonna prepare for that?
Well, look, we had a pretty tough 4 months, and these are funny days now, because you think usually in basketball, you're used to just training every day, pretty much the whole year. But it's different when you have the bubble, the training bubble, because it's 24/7, and there are no breaks where you can have your visit with your friends, visit with your family. It's just wall to wall basketball, which on one hand is great because we get a lot done. But on the other hand, it's not real life. And when you go through, I think we went through about 10 weeks of that with only a 4-day break. And then right through the cup in Jordan, they needed a bit of time off. And, I told them, don't let your bodies get rusty, don't let the work that we've done go to waste, but give their minds a break really from the grind. So looking ahead to November, I think we probably need a 6 to 8 week training build up. And that would put us sometime probably in early to mid-September getting back to work. So they have a couple of more weeks to relax and do a little bit of cross training as well, some running, get their legs ready. And then I would imagine early to mid-September we'll be back to work, whether that's going to be in a bubble or whether we'll be able to train like normal people. We don't know at this point.
It's kind of tough now to train like pre-pandemic because the cases are rising again and there's new variants. So it's gonna be tough if you guys were back in the bubble. And yeah, Dwight mentioned when he guested here when he got injured with a groin injury, it was kind of tough already for him. He felt out of shape. So what more now if they don't do anything for a couple of weeks? So I think yeah, they need to keep improving on their body so that when they get back to work with you, their bodies won't get shocked on the drills or the exercises you'd make them do to prepare for the next tournament.
Yeah, and I think Diego, we have to learn too, as a coaching and management staff, that these guys just can't go from 100%, a full blown 7 games in 7 days tournament like we had in the King Abdullah Cup, to putting the brakes completely on and sitting on the couch, laying in bed, extended sleeps, and then come straight back to 100% again. So, this is one of the challenges of the pandemic, is the stop-start nature to our training and our preparation. So I think we've got to learn to ease into it, which means we might need to be in the bubble a little bit longer and take sort of a week to, go through some physical preparatory drilling, and keep the training sessions a little bit shorter, and build up our bodies, and then get back into the full speed basketball nature of training.
How do you strike the balance with your philosophy of not, because some of the coaches, like maybe Tom Thibodeau, or I'm not sure, some other coaches from abroad, like they go hard all the time in practice, but then for you can strike the balance on having a slow process before being 100% all out, because you mentioned that it's kind of hard with this pandemic and the new format of some of the tournaments and the short rest that they have. So how do you find the balance of finally getting them step by step to the condition you want them to be?
It's a good question. We're still searching for that, to be honest. And it's interesting you mentioned Tom Thibodeau. I'm a little bit of a disciple of his. I believe in how he coaches work ethic, defense first. So I'd like to think I'm a bit similar philosophically to Coach Thibodeau. But as I said, I think we have to learn, and it might be that my personality isn't suited to the early stages of when we bring the players back in. Maybe I have to turn them over to some strength and conditioning coaches, and maybe the assistant coaches, and maybe I don't even look at them because I might get frustrated because they're not working as hard as I like them to work. But let them go through that build-up period, and then when it's time to push the gas pedal hard, it might be time for me to come back in and inject my philosophy and my methodology of hard work from the time you walk in the gym until you go to bed at night. So this game and life is a never-ending learning process. So this is just another example of how I have to continue to evolve in what is really a different world now.
Yeah. So, and then speaking of evolvement, and of evolving, in the basketball world now with coaching, since you've been coaching since, I don't know, since the 90s or the early 2000s.
I think the Neanderthal age was when I started coaching, sometime Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal, sometime in that era. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been coaching for a lot of years now. And the recent tournament was the one in Jordan. And that wasn't like the best showing, because we only finished fourth in the tournament behind I think Jordan, Egypt, and Tunisia. But there are a lot of learning points, because I think you mentioned in interviews that we welcome back players that weren't healthy in the previous tournaments, like 30, Matt, Ray, and Dave. And you guys played with them, and I think you were like tinkering with some rotations and other plays that Dwight also mentioned when he guested here, that there were a lot of things he learned also that you weren't able to try out in the previous tournament. So what were some of the major takeaways you could share that you saw from the team, maybe positive and negative, in that whole tournament?
I think that it's natural, particularly for you guys in the media, and you speak to the fans really more than you speak to I guess, the participants. So it's natural that there's always a view or an emphasis on results. But we are in a program where results sometimes are secondary. Now, obviously, if we're playing in FIBA competitions, we're going after results. But apart from that, we are really looking at how our program is developing players for 2023 and developing a system for 2023. So much of the Abdullah Cup was about that, looking at combinations of players, looking at players in certain positions. And we were a little bit unfortunate. Again, not having Kai there, it meant shifting some of our guys that we want to develop as wing players, like Justin Baltazar and Carl Tamayo, shifting them more to the front line, to the power forward position. and not having the opportunity to play them as much where we want to play them. But that also gave us the opportunity to play other guys, in other positions a bit more. So it's really about roster evolution, and it's really about challenging our system. We made some huge changes in our system, even from the Olympic qualification tournament to the King Abdullah Cup. We're really striving for a lot more offensive tempo, even in the half court. So it's not just speed up and down the floor, but it's also speed within how we play the game. We're trying to be more unpredictable in the way that we play at the offensive end. We don't want to go away from being a team that produces offensive scoring opportunities for all players. We don't want to be, driven by a superstar mentality that we have to get the ball into a certain player's hands. Mm-hmm. So we need a system that is more complex. It's harder to execute for the players because everybody bears the weight of responsibility. Everybody has to strive for efficiency. But I think when you're not a top-tier talented team in the world, like a Serbia or like an Italy or a France or US, you have to be more difficult to defend. And that means more people have to contribute. So we have to work hard to produce high-quality, efficient shots, and it takes time. And, some players will go hot and cold. Some players are better systems players. Some players are better with a more individualistic approach. So all of this is part of the testing process. We didn't decide to build a rocket and fly to the moon the next day. They had to have a lot of research, a lot of test flights, a lot of casualties, and a lot of failures before there were successes. And I think when we talk about the Philippine national team competing well at the World Cup, qualifying for the Olympics, we're talking about something that is virtually trying to put a man on the moon, or maybe even put a man on Mars. We're that far away from it. And we have an awful lot of work to do. But I think we have the right people, including the players. I think for the most part, I think we have the right people involved. Certainly management is 100% behind us. The early returns from the players have been very good. The results have been very good, much, much better than expected. Mm-hmm. So, we don't want to get complacent and think we've accomplished anything yet. We haven't.
Yeah.
We want to continue to focus more on our failures than our successes, and continue to realize that it's a never-ending learning process.
Yeah. With your immense knowledge here in basketball, like in the European style of play and all these system, like ball movement and a lot of the other concepts that the European countries also run, when do you know like when to introduce you mentioned a more complex style of offense or defense to the team? Because of course you can't just throw everything that you know at them, because they'll get so confused at the start. So when do you know, like now you mentioned in Jordan, you tried new concepts and new plays in order to have a different up-tempo offense. So when do you know when to try something else? And of course, it won't be effective right away. Like that's kind of, you're gonna be lucky if it's effective right away. When do you know when to insert it, and then maybe also how to alter it or change it a bit in order to make them understand it better, or for you guys to execute it in a game?
You know what? I'm going to talk to some of my friends over at ESPN. I think you're ready to go, man. You ask great questions. Seriously. When. Well, I mean, it's not an exact science, so you're guessing a lot. But one of the indicators is when your players start to get pretty good at one style of play, mm-hmm. or one system, and that system can evolve more. So once they start to get some mastery over things, then you can move forward. And the other thing is when it becomes evident that your opponents can figure out your system pretty well. And so your system doesn't have enough complexity in itself. A lot of people were very happy with the way we played in the OQT, going close with Serbia and having the lead against Dominican at the halftime, And really, it looked more like our defense failed against Dominican because we struggled with the one-on-one play of the great Dominican guards. But we were more disappointed with our offense. We were more disappointed with the fact that the system wasn't generating good shot opportunities. And so on the back of that, with a lot of analysis and a lot of discussion with the assistant coaches, we decided to just kind of take a different direction. Not a complete left turn, but sort of divert a little bit in our offensive approach and try, as I said, to get more tempo, more pace, more movement into our offense and try to make our players a little bit less difficult to defend. The challenge then becomes their decision making and their ability to identify opportunities and become good decision makers. And so that's what you're referring to when you say you're not going to put it in and right away it's going to work very well. That's the evolution process for the players.
Yeah, I think it's kind of tough though now, because I don't know if you mentioned in previous interviews that it's really the reps, like the games, like the tune-up games and the practice games that will make them more used to it. But then now you have less of it because of the pandemic. Like the countries can't just go flying in or you flying into their own country. So it's
exactly
kind of
right.
tough to do it in the practice. Like they're just playing 5-on-5 with each other more than like when you had the China tune-up game. I'm pretty sure you guys were able to try things out in that tune-up game. It wasn't even like televised, and I'm pretty sure that it would be advantageous for your team if you guys had more of those in preparation for the FIBA tournaments.
Oh, you're definitely right. And when you do get them, it's interesting you mentioned the China game and the fact that it wasn't televised, because as a coach, if something is televised, you always have a nagging voice in the back of your mind saying, we can't look bad. We can't look bad. Even though we're, testing things out, we can't look bad. Whereas if you play a game behind closed doors, you don't think about that at all. And really you shouldn't, even if the game is televised and it's for whatever reason has a lot of interest, those types of games really should be just testing grounds. And they are, but if, like I said, if people are watching, you have a bit of a concern. So the China game was good, but yeah, we need a lot more of that kind of thing. And that is one of the things that you can look forward to the Gilas program beginning to, I guess, install more of as we move into 2022 and into the future. We certainly going to beef up our schedule with tours and things like that. And some countries I guess are no-go zones because of the COVID, but there are other countries like the US that are pretty wide open, and Europe is pretty wide open right now. And so there are opportunities now that weren't there 4 months ago and 6 months ago and a year ago, and we want to take advantage of those opportunities while we can.
Yeah, you mentioned also, right? Yeah, implementing a lot of new things to the system, and you were very open to learning from the European coaches. I guess that's why a lot of your philosophies and concepts are from them. And in the recent Olympics, I watched a lot of games. The European teams like Slovenia, Spain, France, they have a really great system. I think that's the level we try to aspire to reach also in terms of the system and how their players in the NBA, like Evan Fournier, he's just a decent role player. But when he plays in the system of France, since he's been playing since he was a teenager or early young adult, he memorizes it and he excels in it. Or maybe Luka Doncic and his other Slovenia teammates. He makes them look so good in terms of excelling in the Slovenian system. So I wanted to ask, what were like some of the major takeaways you can get from those teams that you could try implementing in the Gilas? Maybe not right now, but in the future, in terms of how the other teams excel with their own system.
Well, Slovenia was great to watch and they were fun to watch, but they're really Doncic dominated, and you can put the ball in his hands, and he's such an unselfish player, and he has maybe the greatest vision of any basketball player that I've ever seen in my life. So with his ability to put defenses in difficult scenarios and then find the opening, he's an amazing offense all by himself. But I think France was a better example when you see the amazing talent that France has, you know, so many NBA players and really great players, not just role model players or role players, but great players. And yet when you watch them play, as you say, they've been playing together an awful long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, they have the ability to make good players look great and great players look like role players, you know, like they're just out there doing their job. And I think that's a, you know, a marvelous testimony to the evolution of a squad as that group has gone. And that group also included guys like Tony Parker and Boris Diaw and the Gilas Pilipinas and, you know, these guys that were the sort of the forerunners of De Colo and Batum and, you know, Gobert and as you said, Fournier.
Yeah.
So there's been continuity in that program now for almost 20 years, and they've had the same coach.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you look at that, you think, wow, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But when you also watch them play, you think, how do you get all those star players to play so unselfishly and to play in a system where none of them feature, but all of them have moments of being featured? And the answer to that is continuity. It's getting the right people, sticking with them, maintaining a philosophical approach through a good coaching staff. And whether that's with one coach or, you know, a succession of coaches that apply the same model, if you've got the right people and you do that, then you're going to, you know, elevate your program. How high? You know, I don't know, but that's what I hope that we are doing. And we're not specifically trying to emulate France, but France is an excellent model for what, you know, we could emulate. And I think we've got very, very good young players, and we certainly will get more. And as we do that, we can strengthen the talent of our program, but strengthening the chemistry and the cohesion of the program is just as important. And if we derail ourselves and say, oh my gosh, we've got to go get a talented naturalized player and let him a la, you know, Andre Blatch and let him do everything, then we will lose a lot of good work.
Yeah, and I agree with your point there. I really like the way you develop a program because it's not really for short term only, like to win 1 or 2 tournaments, but it's like what France is doing, like 10, 20 years down the line, that it's still a successful program and a successful country in the world of basketball. But for you as a coach and as a program director, how do you convince that maybe like the people on top, like the higher ups, that your philosophy or your program is successful? Like, because Coach Chot also, he mentioned that this has been something they wanted ever since before. Like maybe with Coach Raiko, they tried, but then after like 2 to 3 years, it didn't continue anymore. I forgot what happened. But then for you, now you're able to convince them with this new system and philosophy that you have of having amateur players and then developing them to reach their full potential, like Dwight, Kai, and all these other players. So how do you try to convince them to stick with what you believe in, and also maybe get inputs from them, but like the main focus is what you believe in from the European countries?
You know, going back to France for a second before I directly answer your question, you know, France is only, with this group, they've only actually won 1 European championship.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to have people that can identify evolution. And obviously, you know, the coach had to do a good job selling the fact that they were getting better and better, and they were getting closer and closer to, you know, the loftiest goals, which is gold medal at the World Champs, gold medal at the Olympics. So they're still aspiring to reach those, but they have stuck with the program. And so, you know, to answer your question directly, obviously winning is the greatest convincer to the management people. And so when they saw our wins against Korea, that was validation. When they saw, I guess you'd say, moral victories in the OQT, you know, to some degree, that's validation. But, you know, you also have to be able to show them on a day-to-day basis the work ethic of the players, the buy-in of the players. They have to get feedback that, we like this, we believe in this, we're going forward with this. It's got to come from the players. And so, nothing works if the players don't work. The coaching staff can have the best intentions, the best talent, the best knowledge, the best experience. But if that isn't conveyed to your opponents and to your management by how the players play, then management will abandon you. And of course, the other thing is a program like this isn't cheap. And this was a big problem ultimately in the Reiko-Toraman area, the fact that they did accomplish a lot, but it's an expensive program to run. When you're literally taking responsibility for professionalizing a full basketball team for significant portions of the year. So again, I don't think we emphasize enough the phenomenal contribution of Boss MVP and his support of Gilas, his support of the SBP. It just doesn't exist without the tremendous, investment that he makes. And, if there's ever a day that he decides that it's too much, then, the program will struggle. It will suffer. It will either have to find alternative sources, or it will, cease to exist and be resurrected in another form. So our job really to convince people is to continue to play well, but to get results. And that's why we can't ever ignore the fact that we've got to win. And we've got to get our win against Tunisia was a big win. It was a validating win. Tunisia is an outstanding African nation. So piling up wins like that means an awful lot for, program sustainability. And, we can't just keep talking about development all the time. We have to supply some results as well.
Yeah, for sure, it's gonna eventually happen. Since I think you're the one who practice also consistency on like their development and work ethic and how they continue to improve every day. And maybe if like the higher ups or the management will ask for like what happened from this month to last month, you could present really great improvements or something new you implemented to the team, so that will get them more convinced that you actually have something to present and not just like vague answers like, oh yeah, we got better in shooting or something, or we got better in defending the pick and roll. Like, but then you can actually be more specific and tell them. And then when it's the games already, like the Korea game and the Indonesia game, you could prove it to them with the performance of the team. And yeah, the Tunisia game, I like that because I think we lost to Tunisia in the World Cup by 20, I think, when we played them with the PBA players in China. But then with this new crop of players, you guys were able to beat them in a really gut-wrenching game. And I really enjoyed that, especially 30's game winner I got. And the score was so confusing. Like as a fan, like here when we were watching live stream, it was kind of tough to see the score. So I wasn't sure. Like when Ray Suerte hit the game tying 3 in regulation, I was like, oh, that's a game tying 3. I thought it was a go-ahead 3 because the score was confusing. But then I think that was a great win for you guys, and you were able to find the right combination, especially towards the end game on the closing lineup for the team.
Well, it's right now it's a little bit of guesswork, to be honest, because we haven't seen these players in those situations often enough to be able to say that they've proven themselves. Obviously, through training and other games, you begin to develop certain beliefs. But, the nature of playing against that level of competition is that there's very few players that are going to be consistently excellent, because we're just we're outmanned, and these guys are learning how to play against that level of competition. So there's always going to be ups and downs, particularly for the young ones. So when you get it right, it can be a little bit of fool's gold too. You can think, okay, well, we found the right combination, and the next time, they're not able to perform the same way. So, we guard ourselves against the highs and the lows. We try to find that middle level, and as a coaching staff, remain analytical more than anything else. And we want the players to enjoy their successes, but we're always trying to bring them back to earth and say, just make sure the next game there isn't a letdown. The next practice we don't come in complacent with big heads. But that's coaching, and that's all part of I guess, the joy that I've gotten out of coaching for an awful long time.
Yeah. And through all these things that you've mentioned, all these philosophies and all these ways of thinking and high basketball IQ that you've been imparting to your players and your other assistant coaches and staff, it's curious to also know like how you grew up and your upbringing and how you developed being one of the great coaches here in the Philippines and all over the world. So I wanted to ask, like, how did you start to get into coaching? Like, were you a player before when you were growing up also, but then you decided to stick to coaching before? Because the first time I heard about you already as a coach was in New Zealand in early 2000s when you made them reach the World Cup, which is kind of like I don't know if it ever happened again because Australia is the one that qualifies in that continent or that division now. So how did you start with coaching and being one of the best right now?
Well, I don't know if I am one of the best. That's a very lofty praise. Thank you. But I was born into it. I was the youngest of 5 boys, and our father was a basketball coach, a school teacher and a basketball coach. So I didn't really have much chance. And I did play the game. I love the game. There was never a time that I thought, oh, I want to do something else. Basketball really ran in my blood. And of course, when I was a kid, I wanted to play. I wanted to play at the highest level. But my dad was a little bit more of a visionary than I was, which is normal. And so he understood I didn't really have much future as a player because a little bit too short, a little bit too slow. And so he discouraged me playing beyond high school. And he said, instead, you should go and pursue an academic, degree. And I was reluctant, but my dad was a very strong authoritarian figure, and I couldn't really go against his wishes. So off I went to the University of Notre Dame after my high school degree and high school basketball career. And I certainly wasn't good enough to play in that program. And I got a degree in accounting, and I spent a couple of years working in Chicago in a corporate environment, and I knew it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. And so, I started getting on the phone and making phone calls through connections to my dad, and he didn't like it. He didn't want me to get into basketball, but it's where my heart was. And so eventually I followed my heart, and I started coaching when I was about 25 years old, I guess. And I was an assistant coach for 5 years. I worked for one outstanding basketball coach in the States, and then found my way to New Zealand. And I was a bit frustrated in the U.S. because I wasn't a head coach, and the program I was with wasn't a good program. And so when the opportunity to go to New Zealand came up, I thought it was for 6 months, but it was actually for 20 years. And that's really where I found myself, probably as a man. I found myself as a coach, and that's where there's still a lot of black blood that runs through my veins, from the Tall Blacks, and I have a deep love and respect for that program, and I spent a great time in my career there. But, New Zealand was a hard place to learn the game because the game is all about rugby. Sports is all about rugby in New Zealand. And I learned a lot from rugby, believe it or not. I had very good friends who were rugby coaches. I actually coached rugby for a while in the late 1990s. And I learned an awful lot from the game of rugby, the sport of rugby. But ultimately, my heart was as a basketball coach, and my education was one of trial and error a lot. Try something and fail, try something and fail, and then try to improve. And even when I got the Tall Black coaching job, our first, I guess, adventures with that team, we had a lot of failure, and there was a lot of learning for our coaching staff. But we were always good students of the game. And we never, ever were arrogant and thought that we knew it all. And so consequently, with a great group of players we had at that time, we were able to do some pretty remarkable things. And that, of course, allowed me to have a lot more opportunities in coaching.
Yeah, you mentioned that you encountered also a ton of failures with a lot of adventurous things you tried in terms of coaching and even before coaching in the United States. So I'm curious to know also what were like the best lessons you learned in that younger years of yours, maybe before you experienced success in New Zealand because you tried out a lot of things, or maybe even in the United States yet when you were still like studying or maybe working in Chicago where you felt like it wasn't really for you before you found your calling as a coach. Like what did you learn for about yourself maybe, or maybe about life that you can still apply now in your current job, maybe in Ateneo or in Gilas? That was like that happened a lot of years ago, but then it still stuck to you and you can still like impart it to others or apply it to your life.
Well, number one was to be humble, and in this sense, when we're young, a lot of times we're not humble. We might think we are, but we really have a belief in ourselves beyond what we're capable of doing. And in a way, that's good because that makes us take chances. It makes us be adventurous. But for me, it was to learn to respect the knowledge that was in the game that, I thought I knew so much because my father was a coach and because I was a pretty good player. And I had to learn that I didn't know very much. I had to learn that I needed to respect my elders. And when I say my elders, the guys that had been coaching much longer than me. Even one of the lessons being that not only do you learn what to do, but you also learn what not to do. You also learn from other people's failures. Because in an industry like coaching, you don't get an unlimited number of chances. It's not like you get a lot of second chances. Mm-hmm. So you're smart if you learn from other people's failures because you can't fail too much yourself. Maybe you can fail small, but you can't fail big because you just won't keep getting opportunities. So I remember when I was a pretty young coach and I got my first head coaching job at a higher level. I remember thinking, well, I'm going to design an offense. Well, I was no more ready to design an offense than I was to design a rocket ship. And it was a miserable failure. And I learned that, that arrogance that I had was not going to serve me well. That there were many, many coaches doing many, many things extremely well. And I would be better off picking and choosing which philosophy to follow, which methodology to follow, and then to work hard. Because I wasn't going to outsmart anybody, because in the context of coaching knowledge, I wasn't that smart. But I could be a great student. Mm-hmm. And to be a great student, it meant that I would have to work hard. And I think these were the biggest lessons of my early coaching career was don't try to be too innovative myself. Understand that there is some geniuses out there. They're doing great stuff, and there's no shame in being a copycat, and the one thing that I always had control of was my ability to work hard. And I decided pretty early on that nobody would outwork me. So I became a student that learned faster than most people. And I think those were probably the lessons that carried me forward. And it was the humiliation of failure which made me more humble. And then the biggest lesson I learned about humility was to make sure that I edified everybody else in the process that were contributing to my team. So that was players, assistant coaches, management, to edify them, to let everybody know that it's their work and it's their effort that ultimately contributes to success. And here's why, because it's true. It isn't the head coach, it isn't his work ethic that at the end of the day gets you wins. It might be his leadership, mm-hmm. and his leadership should be anchored in tremendous work ethic, but it's really the work of the people that are at the coalface, the players, the assistant coaches, the funders, the people that are supporting you with resources. It's all of their work that when you add it all up equals victories and equals championships and equals successes.
Yeah, for sure. I could also attest to that. Like, as a person that starts podcasting, like Mix Bustos, before when I talked to him, he said when he started, he also got like a small pieces of information from the best journalists when he was starting. Like from this, what's good about him, and then he makes it his own. So it's similar to what you mentioned in coaching. You don't just use the coaching philosophy of one guy, or only what you think is good, but then you have an open mind and get to learn from others and also apply it to make it your own, and maybe formulate your own philosophy and system that you've been doing over 30 years now, and it's been working out. So that
Plus,
30 plus years, and that's a great lesson that others could really emulate and learn from your answer in the previous question. So it can also be applied also to other people, not only in sports but also in other professions, that they could also use that
absolutely.
mentality in approaching their success or their passion in the certain field that they're going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then I mentioned also the pinnacle or the apex of your New Zealand stint in your 20 years when you guys made the FIBA World Cup. So when you're already on top, I'm also curious how you tell your team or your coaching staff or the whole management to stay on top. Like you mentioned that you don't want to be too innovative and implement a lot of new things if you're not that familiar or you're not too knowledgeable on it. But then for you, how do you continue evolving? Like in Lebanon, also in Jordan, you also reached like high stages, like you won a championship and then a silver medal respectively. But then I'm curious how you make your team remain motivated and hungry to continue desiring for success even if they already achieved it.
Diego, I think one of the really interesting things about being in sport is trying to climb the mountain, and everybody's trying to do that. Everybody's excited about that first great win, that first great achievement, that first great championship. But there's another thing that exists in sport, and I had a great instruction in this, and that is success after success. And that's what you're talking about. And so you go back to the 90s when I coached Auckland in the New Zealand Basketball League, and we won, a championship in 1995, kind of out of nowhere. And then we won in 96 and 97, lost in 98, won in 99 and 2000. And so I guess that era was my training ground in how do I give that message to the players? How do I continue to motivate? How do we stimulate the environment to avoid complacency? And all of that is in pursuit of success after success. And so we were always trying to, find ways to do it. And when I say we, what I'm talking about is my coaching staff or the management team, because it's always a collective effort, even the captains of the teams. So, it is a lot about messaging. It's a lot about, when the players walk in the first day after being champions the year before, what is the challenge that you put on the table in front of them? And if you just say, come on, guys, let's go back to back, it's not going to work. You have to break it down. And, for me, coaching, my evolution as a coach has been to be, and I was detailed from the beginning, but it's become even more and more and more detailed. So my first day with those teams would be, guys, last year we shot 47% from the field, and we shot 36% from the three last year. Our opponents shot 42% from the field and 31% from the field. From the three, we have to improve on those. Last year, we averaged 6 steals per game. If we're going to be a defensive pressure team, we want to average 9 steals per game. And so our practices have to reflect this. And so now you can see, you're talking about building blocks. You're not talking about back-to-back. Mm-hmm. You're talking about building blocks, something that they can put their teeth into. So how are we going to shoot the ball at 40% from the three when we only shot it at 34% the previous year? Oh, well, we have to do, we have to get 50 more reps up every practice, every guy. Mm-hmm. So now you give them tangible mechanisms to put success on top of success. And, you know, that's the process for me. So it's the messaging and it's the detail that goes into the work ethic that allows you to take the focus off of what you did the previous year and put the focus on what you do today, not on, you know, the night of the championship 7 months down the track. What are we going to do today in practice that's going to put us in that game to be successful in that game? But that's probably a fairly good summarization of how I do it anyway.
That's great for sure, because yeah, championship, I mean, yeah, that's the ultimate goal again, the following year. But then it's not that specific. But then you as you mentioned, like the steals and the opponent's points per game or opponent field goal percentage, those are more specific. So for them, at least there's like short-term goals that we need to fix this in game 1 of the next season, game 5 of the next season. We have other things to improve on. You're straightforward and frank with them on what you want the team to attain in terms of certain parts of the game. And it's not just, oh, let's play like how we've been playing last year, and then, you know, we might win again, or I'll try this new play, and then you never know if it's gonna win. I think yours is more specific, and it works on the numbers, like data analytics. Now it's also very important. Like with the statistics, it's available for you guys that might not have been available 30 years before. So you use
Correct.
you use it to your advantage also, and how you use these analytics in order to implement new things and to make your players buy in with a change that's gonna keep occurring all throughout your career and also their career with you.
Yeah. So, you know, kind of another way of looking what I'm saying, Diego, is this: you can talk about the what, right? I mean, what do we want to achieve? We want a championship. We want to shoot the ball better. We want to defend better. We want to, but more importantly, how do you break the what down to the how?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's how you practice that achieves the what.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy to set new goals. Anybody can do that, right? But how do you break those goals down into drills and practice attitude and individual players' goals, which contribute to a greater goal for the team? So, you know, I think that's probably where you get into the art of coaching. And it's easy to talk about what we want to achieve, what we want to do. But when you talk about how, you know, does that process equal that result? And that's where you can use, I guess, the trials of other coaches and the experience of other coaches. And you know, if they say, yeah, you know, we did this drill and it yielded this type of defense, well, okay, you know, we can try that. But even that's inexact, because you don't apply the drill exactly the same. You don't use the same vocabulary. So there's still a lot of, you know, testing and failing and finding the right way.
Yeah. How about moving on to the Lebanon and Jordan stints that you had, where you got Stankovic Cup champion in Lebanon and the FIBA Asia silver medal with Jordan. What's something that you learned there that you still were able to grasp or learn a lot from in New Zealand? Or maybe something you already learned, but then you learned it more here in a deeper sense, or you applied it more in a different team, in a different squad or a different culture. And I think through those learnings you were also able to apply it in the Philippines. So what were some of those that you really were able to absorb, and still, you know, you still learn a lot from it based from those 2 stints that you had where you experienced good amount of success?
Well, you know, after New Zealand, you skipped an era there for me, relatively short, but there was the era when I went to Europe, you know, and I coached in Turkey, Greece, and Romania. I didn't coach national teams, but I coached professional teams. And that learning there was that I'm not coaching New Zealanders anymore, you know, and I'm not coaching Americans. And so it was the beginning of appreciating different cultures, because I was in New Zealand a long time, and understanding that I couldn't be the same person that I was in New Zealand, much less the same coach. You know, I might apply the same offensive and defensive systems, but how I did that as a man the Turkish mentality, living in a Muslim country, a different mental approach to sport, and then going to Greece and, their attitude, and then Romania, where it wasn't as professional as Turkey and Greece. And then Lebanon, which was, incredibly different. Lebanon is a society unlike anything. And that's probably the lesson that I take as a coach out of all of those is you're not coaching a culture, but you're coaching within a culture. Mm-hmm. And, if you don't have an appreciation for that, let's say I'm an authoritarian guy, which I am.
Yeah.
And I go into a Turkish basketball team. Well, their society is very hierarchical. So when I walk in as the head coach, there's immediate respect. Mm-hmm. Immediate. Very easy. Greece, on the other hand, is the cradle of democracy. So everybody has a say. Everybody has a right. Greece is it's a country full of intelligent people.
Yeah.
They challenge authority. They challenge your thinking. So I walked into this highly intellectual environment in Greece, and I had to really be on my toes. I had to prove myself. And then, you talk about Lebanon. Well, Lebanon might be the most interesting culture I ever coached in, one of the most interesting experiences, because it's a society that it's divided from, it's divided on every level. Oh. On the social level, you have the wealthy, you have the poor, you have the working class, you have the oligarchs. On a theological basis, you have Sunni Islam, you have Shiite Islam, you have Armenian Christian, you have Roman Catholic, you have Greek Orthodox.
A lot, yeah.
And they're all powerful subcultures. And of course, they exist in all your players. And so that, you might have a team that has a lot of internal conflict, but the players also want to play together and win. And it was a tremendous challenge coaching in Lebanon. And the other thing about Lebanon is, as a nation, I don't want to make this sound overly negative, but the male population in Lebanon is incredibly ego-driven. Incredible. I mean, they have a phenomenal sense of self-belief. So, you have to adjust as a coach. You have to be able to bring these players' egos down, integrate them with one another. But at the same time, if you try to crush their egos, they're just going to walk on you. They're not going to pay attention to you. So that was a real challenge. And then a year later, I go to Jordan, and Jordan it mirrors Turkey. It's very hierarchical. There's tremendous respect. And in Jordan, I found the most important thing to do was to have great relationships with my players off the court.
Yeah.
Is to really respect them as people and to really understand what motivates them, family, personal pride, friendship, alliances with one another. So when I come to the Philippines, again, it's a different culture, but it's not necessarily what I learned in all of those places, but more the fact that I did learn to respect the culture. And some people would say, oh, well, you haven't respected the culture in the Philippines because you're not very sensitive guy, and you don't make way for people's feelings and you step on toes. It's a different story. It's about respecting a culture. And I have tremendous respect for the culture here in the Philippines, the phenomenal ability that Philippines have to be hosts, the kindness, the graciousness, the humility here in the Philippines. I respect all of that. But where I see wrong and where I see injustices, I guess my personal culture is going to be to challenge that and to not just say, well, because that's a long established institution, I'm just going to go along with it. If I perceive something to be faulty or inaccurate, and somebody might say, well, you don't know everything. True. It's very true, but I am a fighter. Yeah. And I fight for what I believe in and what I believe is right. Doesn't mean I'm always right.
Yeah.
but it does mean that I'm always prepared to pull the gloves on if I see something that I think is an injustice. And I guess that's more a personal characteristic, but I can tell you that I have tremendous respect for Philippine society and the Filipino. I have tremendous respect. Some of the kindest, most wonderful people on the planet, in my opinion, and one can only respect that.
Yeah, I like also based from all the cultures that you experienced in your life is the adaptability, because not everyone in the world has that. Like if you make them go to various cultures, they might be already like homesick or shocked on how to deal with different people because they're comfortable. Like if I've been living here in the Philippines my whole life, and I don't know, what if I live in like another country that's vastly different, like in Lebanon? I'd get so shocked that I don't know, what if I don't know how to react? But then maybe there were tough times at the beginning, but then through all your all your stuff you shared right now, it's like majority of it was more positive, and you looked at it in a positive way, and you learned a lot from it, even if they're very different from each other, because yeah, you were able to adapt and learn from the people you were dealing with, which were your players, I guess, majority of the time, and also the coaching staff. So that's great. It's really evident here in the Philippines also, like with how close you are with your players and assistant coaches, like in Ateneo, like some of the players that I've had here on my podcast, they say a lot of good things about you, even if you've only been here for like how many years. Like I've had Isaac, Go, Dwight, Gian Mamuya, Anton Asisio here, and yeah, they've all said that you have a great relationship with them also off the court. So that's really great to hear from them, that their coach is close to them, even if you're not really a Filipino and you've only been here for how many years, and you've been all over the world in other countries as well.
Well, Diego, it's adapt or die, because I'm not going to change Filipino culture or Lebanese culture or Romanian culture. So it's very much adapt or die. And I think what helps me do that is that I have a very curious nature as a person. So I love to go into different cultures and societies and embed myself there and see what makes these cultures work, because they all work. They all have obviously flaws and failures, but none of these countries are the new kids on the block. They've all had societies that have been sustained over decades, if not centuries. So to me, I'm very curious, and I love the challenge on the human level of fitting in. I have a lot of Americans from back home that say, well, how can you possibly live in Lebanon, where there could be a bomb at any moment, there could be an outbreak, and I'm as afraid of that as anybody else, but I'm curious, I'm interested, and I want to know the challenges of the people and how they respond to it. It's just a great learning process for me. And it does mean that I fail sometimes. You've seen me fail publicly here in the Philippines in terms of some of the media stuff. Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, that's I shouldn't be allowed to fail and get away with it. I should be held to a standard. And when I don't meet that standard, I should pay the price like everybody else. But also give me credit for learning and wanting to learn and adapting, as you say. So it's so enjoyable to me. And then to take that out of the macrocosm of society and put it into the microcosm of a team, and then apply my philosophy to that team within a broader culture, it's a lot of fun. It's a great challenge. And it's fostered tremendous relationships. And I think probably most of my spare time I spend on some sort of social media platform or another, Viber or WhatsApp or Messenger, talking to old players, talking to old coaches, talking to old friends that I've met in other countries throughout the years, and the list just keeps growing. So I'm blessed. I'm very blessed. And I'm most of all, I'm blessed by a mother and a father that obviously instilled these characteristics and qualities inside of me. And, I'll forever be indebted to the Lord and to my parents for giving me these attributes.
I'm also curious. You mentioned that people have criticized you and bashed you about being straightforward or honest about like some of the stuff you say, like in the Coaches Unfiltered podcast. Yeah, people really tweeted a lot and posted on social media about you. But then some of the stuff you really say, it's just your opinion and you're honest with it. And sometimes Filipinos, you mentioned they can be a bit sensitive with some of the things that are being said by people, even if it's facts. Like they kind of don't want to hear sometimes the sad reality or the truth that hurts. But then for you, it's just your opinion, and that's what like podcasting or social media or media is for. Like you ask us a question, you answer it. And I think in the US it's more like that. Like Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, they also get bashed, but then not like they get bashed for some of their takes. But then that's when it's super outrageous. But then for you, that's how you grew up, and that's how you were taught to be like straightforward and honest with your opinions. And you mentioned that whatever happens, like that it's a learning experience for you. So what do you think about how do you adjust, and how do you kind of do you still remain the way you are despite the backlash that you get? Because I'm very honest, and sometimes maybe for others it doesn't stand well, because if it's like sad or unfortunate truth, I still want to hear the truth and learn more from the truth rather than like sugarcoating it or not really revealing the whole truth because you want to not hurt the feelings of the others. So for you, what's your take on that?
You do learn. It's part of adapting is understanding what the boundaries are. But also everybody's opinion is their truth. Mm-hmm. Nobody has an opinion about something knowing that it's false. Mm-hmm. That's called a lie. That's not an opinion.
Yeah.
So, if I do make a statement on some issue, if I've been asked to make a statement, it is my truth.
Yeah.
And the question then is, can I substantiate that truth? And I believe that I was taught by my dad a long time ago that if I don't know what I'm talking about, keep my mouth shut. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, I would say that, if you hear me out there giving an opinion on something, it's rarely just an off-the-cuff feeling. Mm-hmm. It's generally substantiated by data or experience or an understanding beyond just the words and the opinion. That doesn't mean I'm perfect, doesn't mean I'm always right. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a person that is prone to just throw opinions around. And we see so much of that in the world today with social media, as
Twitter.
Unsubstantiated truths, And of course, what that spawns is conspiracy theories, because when you have people saying things, other people are like, oh, yeah, well, what's behind that? Mm-hmm. And then because social media only gives you 140 characters to explain yourself, so much of what people say goes unexplained. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden you have to think, well, they know something that they're not saying. The reality is we just all have our own truths. And if you really want to delve into any issue, and take COVID for an example, there are so many authoritative opinions about COVID, what's going on with the numbers, what's going on with the virus itself, what's going on with the political responses to it. But everybody is living in this 140 character world where you don't really go and educate yourself. Mm-hmm. And so, most of what you read, I would just discount it, and I think you have to go and read and dig yourself into the facts of whatever the issue is. And then and only then can you kind of come out and give an authoritative opinion. And if you do that enough, then you start to get a reputation. And then people will say, oh, you can listen to him. And then you become what they call today an influencer, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so, in my little corner of the world in basketball coaching, I'd like to think that I do speak with some authority.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But I also acknowledge that I still have a tremendous amount to learn.
Mm-hmm. like some of the stuff you said, yeah, you could back it up naman with facts and with based from prior experience. So others could also learn from it. Like maybe yeah, it was harsh for them or it's a bit too insensitive. But then why don't they just like look at it in a different point of view in order to learn from it for the future? That's what my opinion on it. And like my friends were also asking because I have a lot of friends that are sports fans and they also like how you coach and how you your philosophy and how you deal with players and all the other things here in the Philippines. And even before when you weren't the coach of Gilas, they were saying that you were they really needed you back, especially when we kept losing. So that's why they were asking, especially when that controversy happened, they were asking my opinion on it. And that's what I kept telling them, that why don't they just look at it in a non-confrontational approach and rather learn from it? Because there were others that I don't want to mention anymore, but then like in articles that I read online that parang nakikipag-away pa, like they wanted to like fight pa. But then of course there's no point in doing that. You're not gonna achieve the success that you want as a whole basketball nation here.
Yeah, and look, I'm not out there looking for conflict or fights. You know, I was just answering a question, and
Yeah.
and people are going to hear what they want to hear sometimes, and you know, that debate is long dead, and I think people know that I'm dedicated to the sport of basketball here in the Philippines. I'm dedicated. I'm a huge proponent of coaches. I never criticize coaches. We have a tough job, and you know, however words were interpreted or misinterpreted, it's irrelevant now. And coaches are going to challenge me, you know, on the court sometimes. Like you know, I love Coach Io. You know, I mean, you know, and there was a time when, you know, we were sword fighting with one another, even in the media, you know, and he was saying, oh, you know, Coach Tab's only playing head games. And, you know, I'm sitting there laughing, saying I'm not playing head games, but what a smart thing for him to say, because his players then will read that. And that's a tool for him to use with his players. And so, you know, I've become friends with Alden over the years. And you know, I think that that's the best way. You know, it's good for us to fight in the context of our teams and on the court, and we can make the sport interesting, you know, through media confrontation and trash talk, if you will. But there isn't a single coach in the world that I am the least bit interested in coming to blows with, or that I wish harm or ill on. There isn't a single one. And there never has been, even for a moment, because I know we all have a tough job. So if anybody thinks that, you know, feelings were hurt and, you know, there was some animosity there from my side, never. And if it was from others' side, I think that's unfortunate. And yeah, I apologize. I would never have wanted that to be the case. I never want any harm to come to coaches or their reputations. We have to live and die by what happens on the court with our teams, and that's tough enough. So, you know, never was anything intended to put anybody in a bad light. And in fact, I was really putting myself in a bad light by saying my initial perceptions were wrong. And, you know, so I hope that, you know, for your listening public, that clarifies that I'm a coach's guy. I'm a coach's coach. You know, I don't want coaches to fail or have a hard time because of what I say, but I want all coaches to have a hard time because of how my team plays, and that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah. How about this? You mentioned also the culture here, that you really were impressed with it and how the basketball world is here and the hospitality and everything. But what was the story on how you got here? Like maybe the first job that you got for Gilas, and what was the decision process like before you accepted the offer?
Oh, it was really sort of came out of nowhere, and I was really flattered. You know, that's how I can say it. The Philippines, you know, we all watched the movie Jurassic Park, right? And that island is that one in the mist and the clouds, you know, and everybody was intrigued by it, but nobody really knew what was going on there. Well, that's the basketball world's perception of the Philippines. You may not know that, but we're so insular here. We're not open to the world. You know, we don't allow a lot of coaches to come in here. We only have imports for a couple of months, we ship them out again. And, you know, some of them come back, but a lot don't ever come back. And so you hear stories about the Philippines, but there's not a lot of external involvement deeply in Philippine basketball. And that was my perception of it as well. And so I was just down in New Zealand, coaching my team down there, and received a phone call from Butch Antonio. And Butch was saying that, the Gilas was, trying to set up a tour to Australia and New Zealand, and they were having some problems. And, did I know anybody, and is there anything I could do to help? And so after a few conversations, I could see that they had some real problems. And I said, hey, Butch, look, let me just put the whole thing together for you guys. I can do it all here in Napier, New Zealand, the small town in New Zealand. I said, I can set your camp up here, and I can get you some games, and I can talk to some people. And he was like, that would be fantastic. And so, so we made that happen. And then maybe, I don't know the timelines, 10 days later or something, Coach Chot calls me and he said, hey, thanks for helping us out. I said, look, I'm really happy to do that. And I had met Chot, when I was coaching Jordan in Lebanon, and we had played against the Philippines. And I knew Butch a little bit. And Chot said, hey, would you be interested in coming along to a practice and maybe giving the team a little bit of your insight at the defensive end of the floor? Mm-hmm. I was a little bit shocked, but I said, of course, Chot, if that will help you and if that will help the team, I'd be happy to do that. And so I did. I went along, and, afterwards he said, hey, thanks very much. That was pretty good. Could you come back tomorrow and do it again? I was like, man, are you going to pay me now? I was like, well, what am I doing here? But no, I'm joking. Yeah. And I said, sure, because I got to know the players a little bit, and got to work with them and had fun with them. So sure enough, the next day I went back, did a little bit more. And then I was going to every practice and really just watching and just hanging around and getting to know everybody. And then before it was over, Chot said, how would you like to, come up to Manila for the FIBA Asia tournament next month and work with us and be a consultant? Mm-hmm. I didn't really have anything to do at the time. So I said, man, I'm flattered. I'd be really excited to do that. And so that was it. That's how it happened.
Okay, yeah. So those were the success that they had with Coach Chot for a few years. And then you became the head coach in 2015. So entering the 2015 FIBA Asia, you guys weren't the most talented team. I forgot what happened. But then you guys had like Asi Taolava, JC and Talent, these players that people did not expect to make the Gilas team. Like, not to disrespect them, but then they thought like other players were more deserving of a spot. But I forgot some reasons on why you just had them. And it was also maybe your decision on these players that fit your system more compared to others. But what were the things that you saw from the previous tournaments with a different crop of players? Like, not everyone you got from your 2015 FIBA Asia team was the players from the 2014 and 2013 teams. So what were the points that you could really take from the previous tournaments that you applied in your own system and your own tenure during that 2015 impressive run where you got silver medal? And unfortunately, if it wasn't in China, you might have won gold, honestly.
You never know. You have to play the hand that you're dealt. But look, there were a lot of player unavailabilities, a lot of injuries in that year, and I mean, probably some political issues too.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, but specifics I don't remember. But I think I chose, in hindsight, I think I chose the best team that I could put on the floor. And, you didn't mention Sonny Thoss and you didn't mention Don Don, these guys that were much older along with Asi. And then I had the younger guys too. I had Terrence in that team. I had Calvin in that team. And it was a real mix. And, I don't remember who the selection came down to between LA and somebody else, but I made a big mistake on that by not choosing LA in that team. He should have been in that team. We would have prospered from his leadership, I'm sure. But you make mistakes, and that's one I wish I hadn't. That's a mistake I wish I hadn't made. But that team was it was fun. It was a misfit team, It was It wasn't representative of the best talent that we have in the Philippines. But at the same time, I think because of that identity, they were a little bit easier to blend into a chemistry. They were so willing to work with one another. They understood the doubts that everybody had for them. And they had a real chip on their shoulder, which I love coaching a team that has a chip on its shoulder. And so it was a little bit easier to mold them into a pretty good unit. But, you know, we were obviously susceptible. We lost to Palestine in the first game. You know, we were a team that could be very good on a given day and you know, very ordinary on a given day. So to make that run and get to the final was it was exciting. It was one of the, as I look back on my career, it was one of the most gratifying teams that I ever had the honor of coaching. And being my first time representing the Philippines, that also was a tremendous honor. And I think what we gave back to the Philippines in that year was something special. And that will always be a team that I remember, and it'll be a group of guys that I remember, and it'll be a time representing a country that is very, very special to me. And I'm very grateful to everybody that went into allowing me that opportunity and everybody that worked so hard to make it a successful stint.
Yeah, Carlo Pamintuan, I think he was covering the Gilas with you guys, and he always mentions every time the team gets brought up that it's his favorite because of I think the chemistry and the camaraderie you guys had. You guys were very close, and you guys beat Iran. I think that was very impressive because you didn't really beat them before. You kept losing to them in previous iterations of the FIBA tournaments, but in that year you guys prepared well for them. I think you always said that you guys said I think if you beat them, you feel you could reach the gold medal match. So you prepared for them a lot. And Haddadi was still really great at that time. He was still at the peak of his career. I think he wasn't like going down yet like now, but he's still pretty good. And they had other players that were very impressive that I learned more over the years because of the success they have over Gilas. But for you, was preparing against Iran, like focusing on them, like if you beat them, since the other countries have different styles of play, but then if you contradict their style of play and eventually topple them, which you did, do you think that was really going to prepare you also for like that mentality of beating the other teams? Because of course you needed to beat the other teams as well, but do you think like maybe mentally or emotionally for the players that would be already helpful if you guys beat Iran and they'd be motivated to continue playing your system and in order to beat the others?
You know, Diego, those international tournaments are they're a unique animal. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've got I don't know, maybe as much experience as anybody in the world in mm-hmm. coaching in those tournaments because of 5 national teams and you know, a lot of opportunities, both world championships, Olympics, and a lot of qualification tournaments. And you know, when you approach those tournaments, you kind of have to look at how they are likely to play out as you go through the tournament. And we could see very clearly a pathway to playing Iran mm-hmm. in the quarterfinals. You know, that either the quarterfinals or the semifinals. It looked like we would not hit China until the final. And just the way the pools were shaped and everything else. And so very early on, knowing that if we wanted to get to those last games, we might have to get past an Iranian team. Very early on, we began to focus on Iran's style of play. And that meant that we took some shortcuts in preparing for Palestine, preparing for Hong Kong, mm-hmm. Because we felt we would beat them. Yeah. And, you know, we didn't, but as it worked out, you know, in the end, we got that matchup probably one game before we expected it, probably in the quarters rather than the semis. And we were very ready. We were very well prepared for Iran. And it was certainly the key to the game. I think, you know, there's always a lot of individual things that go on that add up to successes in games. And, you know, our preparation was huge but I think also Calvin's play in that game and his antagonistic nature that he got under Haddadi's skin so badly in that game. And only Calvin, in his inimitable personality and character, only he can do that and get away with it. And, I think that the maturity of that team with guys like Ossie and Sonny and Don and JC, they could allow Calvin to do that without it being a distraction to the way we were playing. And so it was very interesting. I was sitting there watching and I was very worried. I was like, oh no, Calvin, Calvin's being Calvin. And, this could go either way. And he did a phenomenal job in that game. And, you're always sitting there as a coach with the hook ready, like if he takes one step too far, okay, I got to get him out. But it just kept going the right way for him, and it kept going the wrong way for Haddadi. And, we could see that happening. And in the end, sometimes with Calvin, it goes the other way. The script goes the other way. But in that situation, we were really fortunate, and he did a phenomenal job. And it was exciting to watch. It was fun to watch. But a lot of the credit goes to the veteran players in that team that were able to keep everybody focused. And because it was still a tough game. It wasn't an easy win, no matter what. So we still needed to make plays as a team. But a lot of it was, Calvin putting us in that position.
Yeah, maybe it's also a testament to how you form the team, because like Don was not like at the peak of his career anymore, but then like he made crucial threes all throughout the tournament, I remember. And there were even games where Sonny, Toss, and Asi, they were still contributing even a bit less than what they were during the peak of their career. But then you found like the way for them to contribute. And also, maybe their contribution wasn't on the court. Like, you mentioned helping the young guys like Terrence and Calvin. And I think that's very integral in the formation of a team, also in the success of a team. That's not really seen on paper or by the fans, because that's behind the scenes already. So it's also maybe how you constructed the team, that even if it wasn't, you said it was a misfit, or it wasn't like the best 12 that you could get for a really prestigious tournament, but then you were able to find the best available talent based from the ones available. You find the best combination of the 12 players that competed in that tournament. So unfortunately, you guys didn't win the gold medal match. But then for you, what was your assessment on that gold medal match on the team? Like maybe from 1 to 10, like how well did they play, and what were your thoughts right after?
It's like living chess, what you're talking about. That when you have a team that you can't just run them out there and let them go, because they have all the talent in the world and they have lots of preparation time, and they're like a well-oiled machine. We weren't. And so it was like, he just used his queen, and now I've got to, counter, like how long do you let Terrence go? Because Terrence is going to go out there and he's going to be Terrence. And if that's going great, then you ride it. And if it's not, okay, you got to, use the hook and pull them out. But, as we approached that China game, I'd been in, 2011, I'd been in the final with China with my Jordanian team.
Yeah.
And, that one of the greatest frustrations of my career, one of the greatest, hurts of my career, I thought we did enough to win that game. And to see the way that it was taken away from us was gut wrenching. So I was, I wasn't unprepared for what could happen with a final game against China, but you at the same time, you can't go in there with a defeatist attitude. You've got to go in with a let's find a way mentality. And we did. We tried to do that, but China had a very good team, number one. And number two, we saw right away with the bus that wasn't charged. So we had to, we were delayed in getting to the arena, the basket being lowered during warm-ups to fix the net or whatever. We saw right away that, there was going to be some extracurricular activity in trying to get this win. But we had talked about that. But I think it did take its toll. I think that we were challenged mentally. Our mental toughness was challenged. I don't think that we, I wouldn't give us 100% grade. Even myself, the frustrations came through at times. The thought coming to the front of your head, this isn't fair, and you can't allow that, because it doesn't matter. Simple as that. It just doesn't matter, because you're not going to change that scenario. So what you can control is how you play. So I don't think we would grade out 100% in terms of keeping that mentality, away. I think we failed at times, but I think the team fought extremely hard, and you can't entirely take away from the Chinese team the fact that that was an outstanding basketball team, and they were going to be difficult to beat no matter the circumstances. And in the end, the game wasn't really that close. It was a 12-point, I guess an 8 to 12-point game, and I don't know what the final score was, but it was disheartening to have to deal with some of the off the court, antics, I guess. But by the same token, you go out to play a game of football in America, and you prepare one way, and then it rains. You've just got to be able to adjust, and you've got to be bigger than the circumstances, no matter what the circumstances are, if you want to get that gold medal. And on that occasion, we weren't. And so whether it was the quality of China, whether it was the extracurriculars that we had to deal with, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we were silver medalists, and you can cry all day long about what the circumstances were, but you have to go out and win the game. And I was proud of the boys for the tournament, for the effort. But at the end of the day, it isn't the kind of success that you're hoping for.
Yeah, a lot of the reasons you illustrated were also the reasons why it's one of my favorite, or maybe one of my favorite Gilas teams, also because of the resiliency and the fortitude they showed despite everything. Like even before the tournament, I'm pretty sure there were problems in terms of constructing the team, and all the Palestine laws. Everyone was outrageous. They were like, "What? You guys lost to Palestine? That never happens." And then all throughout the tournament, and they're back on you when you beat Iran, and then they're now bashing all the refs and all the organizers and everything during the finals. So there's a lot of events and situations that occurred all throughout those weeks. But then that's what makes sports and basketball fun. Like a lot of unexpected things happen, and it's how you adapt and adjust and react to all these situations what makes you stand out and eventually succeed in what you love. So that's what made the team really impressive. And I think it would have been great if you had also more time to also have a longer program like 2015 onwards. But then, unfortunately that didn't happen. But at least now you have the time and the system and the leadership to also, with this new crop, to finally implement what you really wanted ever since the beginning.
Yeah, we have a lot more time. I was just thinking while you were saying that, that I don't know, maybe in 20 years time, you won't have this ever again. It might be robots out there playing, because this is the way the world is going. Everything is digital, and we don't want those external, potentially unfair issues to impact the outcome of games. You watch tennis now, and they have the Cyclops, so nobody misses a call anymore. And now you have replays in all the sports, and we're turning the wonder and the magic of sport, where we have to overcome unfair things. We're turning that over to the digital age, and now everything is too perfect, everything is too sterile, everything is too just right. And so mental toughness is not really required as much as what it was before. And we will lose something in this process. We already have lost something in this process. Are we gaining something by having, things that are more fair? Possibly, possibly. But I think we are losing something. But, to get to your point, to now have the opportunity with this team to train them over longer periods of time, it's a more perfect scenario for Philippine basketball, that we can put a better team out there on the floor. But then again, it's never perfect, is it? Because in a perfect world, we would have, Paul Lee and Jason Castro and Junmar Fajardo and Japet Aguilar and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and all of that time. But that's just not the world we live in.
Yeah.
So there's no point crying about any of it. And fans love to say the what ifs. As a coach, I can't afford to live there. I can't afford to live in the what ifs. I have to take the hand that's dealt, be positive about it, and, convince these players that this is the very best scenario for Philippine basketball, and that they should go out there proud to represent, not worried that other people are saying, oh, we should have other players out there. Forget that. It's us. It's us against everybody. And if that's us against even some of our fans, so what? It's just more fuel to the fire. It's just more chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And, to me, I like that imperfect world. I like the greater challenges. I like to look at a peak and say, well, nobody's ever climbed that before. And let's go, as Sir Edmund Hillary said when he first climbed Mount Everest, he said, we knocked the bastard off, and he wouldn't have said that if it was just another mountain to climb. And I think that in my sporting career, I've coached so many underdog teams. And Sir Edmund Hillary has probably been one of my greatest inspirations in my life. And so in my own mind and in my own heart, I've walked away from so many games and tournaments and said to myself, yep, we knocked the bastard off.
Yeah.
And, that's appropriate. That's fitting for me, and it's fitting for the teams that I've coached.
Yeah, those are great, really, insights. And I believe you could really apply it more, and people could learn more about it in the next few years as you handle the Gilas program. But then, yeah, since we've more than like 1.5 hours already, and we still haven't talked about like Ateneo and your other Gilas teams, also like the 2016 OQT. Maybe like in another episode, we could continue that or talk more about like the updates of the current Gilas team. But before you go, it's just for some fun questions that I'd want to ask. So one of it is, since you've been in New Zealand for like you were in New Zealand for how many years, and they're really good in like dealing with COVID cases, and like they're one case and they go lockdown, so it doesn't like spread. Like here, it's very bad. Like now it's like 16,000, 17,000 cases a day. So what do you love about New Zealand in terms of that aspect and how they deal with problems like that, like with COVID now? What do you really love about them?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I approach this whole thing from a very controversial angle. I think that there shouldn't be any lockdowns. I'm a believer that we have to challenge ourselves individually to handle every altercation and every confrontation that comes our way in life. And I'm a 63-year-old man, and maybe the COVID is more dangerous for me than it is for you, who's probably in your 20s. All the statistics say that. So for me, the challenge is to get my fitness level up as high as it can possibly be, so that my immune system, if I do get COVID, and when I did get COVID, that my immune system can handle it on my own. And if I'm a person that is very compromised from a health standpoint, then I need to surround myself with a loving family and a lot of care that protects me and defends me from it. But I think the world has and will continue to suffer mightily from the fact that quarantines, lockdowns, masks, all of these things, all of these measures taken have destroyed millions of businesses, have negatively impacted tens of millions of lives, have sent the level of individual anxiety through the roof. Suicides are at an alarming rate, especially in young people. Despair and depression is at levels never before seen. And we're not listening to those psychologists and those psychiatrists who are warning us about this and the long-term implication of these things. So I'm not a cold-hearted person that thinks that we should just allow the death toll to go into the millions and millions. But I'm a person that believes as an individual, it's my responsibility to know everything that I need to know about this disease and not abdicate that responsibility to a government that then will use my weakness and my lack of education to try to defend everybody, from things that I believe we should be defending ourselves against. There is no perfect solution. If everybody listened to me, many, many more would die, unquestionably. Mm-hmm. And that would be a tragedy. But somebody please explain to me a world that has ever existed without tragedy.
Yeah.
There isn't one. There never will be one.
Yeah.
So how do we minimize the tragedy in terms of loss of life, in terms of loss of economy, in terms of loss of morale? I mean, humanity needs esprit de corps. We need that. In order to pursue the magnificent things that God has put us on this earth to achieve, we need to feel good about being on this earth. Mm-hmm. And if we have allowed a pandemic to chase us into our caves, how can we feel good about our place on this earth? Mm-hmm. And to me, I think that's more important than anything. So you go back to the New Zealand government, I don't agree with what they do.
Yeah.
I think that they are neutering their population. Mm-hmm. I think they are making everybody dependent on the state instead of dependent on themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that in the long run, they'll pay a price for that rather than the opposite. Have they saved lives?
Sure.
I'd say so. Yes, I'd say they have. Have they will they pay a price for that? I think absolutely. They already have. And I think absolutely they will in the future. Now, who's right and who's wrong? As we've already said, that opinion is my truth. That doesn't make it everybody else's truth.
Yeah.
And I don't expect it to. But as it applies to my life, I do my fitness work every day like I haven't done in 25 years. Mm-hmm. So I take care of myself and I take care of those who love and depend on me and whom I love to the best of my ability. So not a short answer to a quick question. Sorry.
That's fine. That's a last question that I had that my dad also asked me last night if I could ask you, because it's really great to get your perspective on it. And it's a viewpoint that's not it's like pretty unique, but then it had some sense into it and people could also learn from it because maybe the others don't know that viewpoint or perspective. But then for you to have some intelligence and also some reasoning in order to validate what you believe for, it's gonna really the other people might learn from it and will be like, it's like that pala. Like I didn't know that it could be that way in terms of responding to COVID, because now everyone's just like saying whatever. Like in social media, you said they can just say whatever they want, but learning from what you said, I think that'd be great for the audience.
Well, first of all, listen to your dad. That's very important.
Yeah.
And all young people should be listening to voices of authority that are positive and experienced and instructive in their lives. And I wish it was always mom and dad, but I know that it isn't. But you should always have role models who have experience, and you should listen to them. I think one of the things that social media has virtually killed, and there might not be anything sadder than this, and it is that when I grew up, the opportunity, and if I could paint a picture of nostalgia, the opportunity to sit on the front step of your home while your grandfather sits in the rocking chair or your grandmother sits in the rocking chair and talks to you about the lessons of life, that's gone. Mm-hmm. It's been replaced by the noise of social media opinions, which are not, unfortunately, in the vast majority of cases, very authoritative.
Yeah.
So I really wish that somehow we could get back to listening to Grandma and Grandpa tell us about why they failed and why they succeeded in life and how that might apply to my life. Because when I was young, I was blessed with those opportunities. And I can categorically say that virtually every success that I've ever had in life is directly related to the advice that my mother and father gave me. And conversely, every failure that I've had in life is directly related to every time I turn my back on the teachings of my mother and father.
Yeah.
And if that isn't a good enough lesson for people to learn from, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. That's why I'm very obedient. I mean, at least that's what they say. Like most of the time I do follow what they say. So I try to be consistent and keep it up, even if I'm like 21 now. So it's something I'd really live by. And I try to tell people also, like my friends that ask for advice, if they want to be disobedient or not follow rules and stuff. So yeah, that'd be great advice that you gave. Then yeah, so
Thank you, Diego.
yeah, thank you so much again, Coach Tab. It was a really long interview, and we could like have another one because there's still a lot of stuff like I could ask you about life and about basketball that we didn't tackle because of the immense knowledge that you shared here in the podcast. And thank you so much for that. And do you have any final message before you go?
It's long because I'm an old man now. so there's a lot of water under the bridge. But no, listen, I just wish for everybody to be safe. I wish for everybody to be strong. You know, understand yourself, believe in yourself. Where you have weaknesses, work on them. Make yourself better, educate yourself. Where you have strengths, be confident. Take risks in life, be adventurous, and enjoy this blessing that God gave us. And don't run and hide. We don't have to run and hide. If God wants us in his paradise at his side, he'll come get us. Whether that it will be through COVID or through a piano falling on us when we're walking down the street, that's up to God. And so, you know, be bold, be strong, but be intelligent. Read, listen, and learn, and then live. Live life and enjoy it. So thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you. It's great to get to know you. You asked great questions. You did a great interview. And God bless you. God bless all your listeners. And I wish for you a safe and happy near future and distant future.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you so much again, Coach Tab, for those kind words. And before you go, is it okay if we take a picture?
Of course.
Okay, I'll take it from here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much again, Coach Tab, for joining me here on the DVD show, and stay safe out there.